Blade Runner 2033 Labyrinth. Adam, are you excited about this game at all?
I don't know what it is, and I think you're gonna be able to explain it a little bit more than me. So I actually
We
watched. I watched a bit of the first one today, actually, before
Yeah.
I had to leave my house and whatever.
When you
And
talk about the first one, you're talking about the original.
1981, yeah, yeah,
Yep. Okay. Okay.
yep. And
And your
so
thoughts?
I thought it was pretty interesting. Like I said, I didn't get to watch the full thing, but just like the idea of like what's going on, like with the replicants and like trying to figure out if they're human or not, and then
Yeah.
like some of the replicants are like actually like have memories and stuff now. It was pretty intense.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So like, and
Yeah.
especially for a 1981 film. I mean, when that came out, there was like nothing like it at the time. So like,
Hmm.
guys, if you don't know anything about Blade Runner, what we're kind of talking about is Blade Runner was a movie, originally came out in 1982, I believe.
Yeah,
And
one
it's
eighty
a
one, 82, something like that.
81, 82. It's a sci-fi movie directed by Ridley Scott, who of course did Aliens. It stars Harrison Ford, and the basic premise is it's set in this dystopian LA, which in the movie is the future, but it's
Yeah,
actually
2019.
2019. So
It's crazy. I had a comment on that. I was like, that's so funny how they depicted Los Angeles to be in 2019.
so do you love
Imagine if
that?
it did. Imagine if
Yeah.
that's what the world was. That'd be
Right.
crazy.
I remember being a kid and being like, "Oh my god!" and like you watching Back to the Future, and I was like, "Oh my god!" In 2018, we're gonna have hoverboards. It's gonna be so sick.
Yeah, and we
But
don't
no,
like we kind of have hoverboards, but it's like just a wheel. It's a
yeah,
giant wheel.
it's a hoverboard, kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. So it's set in a dystopian LA, which in the movie is the future. It's 2019. And basically the plot of the movie is that this corporation has created synthetic humans. Essentially,
Mhm.
they're kind of like robots, but there's a little bit of other types of things, but we won't go into that. And basically, they're known as replicants, and the replicants, their whole job is they're in charge of space colonization. So they're colonizing places in space. And in the movie, there is a few replicants that end up kind of going rogue and like getting like almost like a Detroit human. Like
Yeah.
they're kind of moving off of their programmable things and starting to think for themselves, and they end up going rogue. So they leave the colonies, come back to Earth, and when they come back to Earth, they obviously start causing some trouble. And it's Harrison Ford's job, who is a detective at the time, to kind of hunt them down. So that's what the whole movie is about. Um, but I really, really, really love the movie, and there's a couple reasons why. If you go back to that time period in 1981, I always kind of thought that Blade Runner was kind of the birth of like the cyberpunk kind of
Yeah.
genre.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like if you guys look at the setting of this, there's like that cyberpunk idea was never really an idea until Blade Runner kind of made it a thing, and it's this very dark, but like very dark, very moody, very like run down, but also like very neon and bright, and like that whole like Tron style
Yeah.
of like film. Like it never existed until then. And I always thought that Blade Runner was kind of like the first ones to kind of introduce that. It's got an amazing score. It's got a cult following. People absolutely love it. And they did end up coming out with a sequel, a lot like the Dumb and Dumber. They came out with a sequel like 30 years later. It
Yeah.
stars Ryan Reynolds, but they did bring Harrison Ford back. And I really like that movie. I thought that was a great movie. So movie wise, it's actually really, really good. And the movie was so good that in 1997, they actually came out with a PC game of this movie. It's a point and click adventure game. It was so loved by people that it ended up getting like a 2020 remaster.
Did it really?
Yeah, it got a 2020 remaster, which is pretty cool for especially for like a 1997 point and click game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really, really, really enjoy the franchise. If you guys have not seen either the original Blade Runner or the sequel, which is Blade Runner
49.
2049, yeah,
Yep.
2049, go check those out. But Anyway, we're here to talk about a game, and now I think we can roll the trailer now that people have like a good idea of what Blade Runner is.
Yeah.
Because this will be the first game we talked about. It got a 1997 game, which was a PC point and click adventure, but this will be the first Blade Runner game in like
25
25
years.
years
Yeah.
that actually comes out on like a next gen console. I'm
Yeah.
super excited for it. So if you guys are just listening on the Spotify, basically right now what we're looking at is this very dark cyberpunk kind of look, right? And we're getting a look at
Yeah.
what I presume is going to be the main character. And the
Yep.
main character, he says something about losing his job, but now they need him back. And we can explain that in a second. And I like this shot right here. So this shot right here is very important. That shot right there is very important where that chick is working with the dial. So we'll jump back
Mhm.
to that in a second. Graphics wise, I think it looks amazing too.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying with this like look though?
Definitely.
Like the dark like blue hue, dark contrast,
Yeah,
bright
that
neons.
yep.
That seems very
The
important too.
the blue yellow that a lot of films
Yeah.
use. Yeah.
Yeah, the blue yellow film grain. So
Yeah.
yeah, guys, if you guys were just listening on the Spotify, they closed that trailer out with a shot of a I believe it's a coyote. And the coyote has these like glowing eyes. So I think that that's very, very, very cool. So like we talked about, we get a shot at the main character, and in the
Mhm.
game, he says, he just lost his job, but they want him back. And I think that's important because it's going to set up what I believe is going to happen in this game. So
Mhm.
this game, it takes place in 2033, which is kind of a key spot in the Blade Runner timeline. Um,
Yep.
there's a few key spots. One is the original, which is 2019, and then obviously the follow up, which is in 2049. So this is directly in the middle.
Mhm.
And what this game should be following is a in 2021, they also did this anime, a Blade Runner anime, and I
Yep.
believe this game is following the anime. And in the anime, what happens is that a massive blackout hits the city, and this city kind of wipes away a bunch of data from the replicants. It wipes out a bunch of data from the actual human citizens. It puts the humans in darkness for days. And this should be taking place directly after the events of that. And I think it's very, very, very important that the trailer itself kind of says there's this quote in the trailer, right, that says, "What does a Blade Runner do when there's no replicants left to hunt?" And I think that's a red herring. Do you think it's a red herring?
I think it could be.
I think it could be a red herring. So basically what happens after the blackout is this prohibition period where it is now illegal to make any replicants, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's illegal to make the replicants. They're trying to do away with them, get them out of the community. And
Mhm.
what I'm thinking here is that a few of them have slipped through the cracks, and that is going to set up like the entire storyline. And I think it's gonna be I think it's gonna be so cool.
Mhm. I agree. I didn't think it like that.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, you're just gonna." Do you think it's gonna play kind of like Detroit? What's I can't
But
remember the name of it. Detroit
Detroit Become
Humans.
Human.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Like.
I do really think it's gonna play a lot like a Detroit Become Human game, and this is gonna be I think that this is gonna be very much not a crazy action game. As like there
Mhm.
will be action, but I
Yeah.
think it's gonna play a lot like Detroit Become Human, where you're making choices, like you're scanning areas, looking for clues, very much more of like a detective based game than it would be just like a kind of Resident Evil shooter. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah. So I'm super excited for that because I really love this genre and I really
Mhm.
love games like that. I I I think it's gonna be like that. I don't want to like. I'm almost nervous throwing it out there, saying like it's not gonna be super intense on the combat, but I really, really, really do feel that it's gonna be much more of a story-driven single player experience. That's gonna be something that's not casual. It's gonna be something that holds your attention, but not something super intense where you can really invest yourself in the story and just like really focus on having a good time with the gameplay instead of just like ridiculously crazy button mashing, and I love that type of stuff.
Yeah, and kind of looking at, so I'm like on Steam right now looking at the description of the game and the genre that they put it in. They don't put it in action adventure. They just have it straight as adventure.
Yeah,
And some of their other titles is Stray, so that cat game where it's an adventure game, and there's
adventure
no
game, yep.
combat in that. And like I don't know a lot of these other ones, but they all look like they're just more of that story kind of pushing forward in the storyline, and things like that. And then although there is one I have like 12 minutes, I don't know if you've heard of that game.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, that's another one where it's not action, it's just trying to like detective work, and Outer Wilds is another one. So a lot of those kind of detective like story, trying to find clues and things like that. So I think that's definitely where this game's gonna go.
Yeah, and I'm excited for that. I mean, Detroit Human, we talk about it all the time. Like maybe it's not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, I actually really like games like that. Like I was a huge fan of Heavy Rain. I put it on my sleepers list. Like I really love that type of genre where it's like you really are just kind of playing like a very great movie. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like you're interacting with a really great movie, and I really love like being able to sink myself into the world and feel like I'm actually like I'm actually doing things in the quote unquote movie that are making a difference and affecting the
right.
outcome. And I really enjoy that. And then put that in the Blade Runner setting, which is this cyberpunk. Like I'm all about that. Like the
Yeah,
neon,
yeah,
like look around, like with the neon
yeah.
retro, like yeah, everything is. I'm just puking RPGs or RGBs everywhere. So like I love the cyberpunk feel, but I think it's gonna be a really cool game, and I don't know. I think it should be on people's radar because this game was announced a little while ago, and there hasn't again like most of the titles that we talked about today. There really isn't a definitive release date.
Mhm.
But I do feel like an actual release date is coming pretty soon. So maybe just
Yeah.
a game to get on your radar.